So right before the pandemic, I bought about 11 acres of land with the intentions of sitting on it for, I don't know, I guess originally I was planning on taking the 10-year plan, and I was going to build a house on it. And so one day, I had a friend of mine down here. And by the way, this I built it. It's that's in the past. We're in 2023 now. I had a friend of mine that was down here with me, and at the time it was a pretty much rectangular property, uh, road frontage on two sides, no driveway, neighbors really far away, and so we needed a driveway. I couldn't even park on my own land. I had to park across the street or on the edge of the road or whatever, which of course drew a lot of attention. You got a lot of people riding by that've been here for 20 years, and then all of a sudden you're walking around with a chainsaw and you're snooping around the place, and they want to know who you are. So at some point, I had a guy rode by. He says, "Hey, you own this place? Is this your place?" I said, "Yeah. What's up?" He said, "Look, I was just wondering. I talked to a prior owner and was talking to him about possibly buying a timber rights." I said, "Timber rights?" He said, "Yeah. We come in, we cut down the trees, we pay you for them, and you know, we haul everything out. You know, there'll be a little bit of cleanup afterwards, but you get paid pretty good for it." So I took a guy's card. And to be honest with you, today I don't even remember what that guy's name was. So I took his card, and my buddy Mike, who was there with me, him and I, we talked about it after the guy left. And we said, hey, he was going to pay how much? $20,000, $30,000 just come out here and just chop down some trees? I mean, at the time, to me, living where I live, which is about a half hour, 40 minutes north of this property, the only thing the trees were good for to me was cutting them up to make, firewood for my fireplace. So, at the time, it's like, do you cut a tree down? Do you haul it to an Amishman in the middle of the country somewhere? Or it didn't make sense, how do you buy a sawmill? Like sawmill, you got to have a big building. You got to have all kinds of equipment. You got to have, how much does a sawmill cost? We don't know. So this was in 2018-ish, beginning of 2018. So at the time, it was a process of, well, we need a driveway. We gotta have a couple building sites. I want to have a shop because I also run a business separate from all of this. And so that became the mission. So it was, every other weekend, every, a few days I was bored when we had nice weather. I would come down here and I would work on the land. And I would clear trees out of the way. So in any case, one day I'm in traffic. My buddy who was down here for that conversation was sitting in the passenger seat of my truck. And he said to me, "Oh, hey, by the way, you got to go a couple hours away on one day next week." And I said, "What's that for?" "I bought you a sawmill." Well, he didn't buy it. He negotiated the deal, but I had to come up with the money. Bought a sawmill, right? How big's a sawmill? We don't know. We got an F-350 and trailers. We'll figure it out. So anyway, bought this sawmill, which, as it turns out, and you'll see it in this video. It's gonna be a couple days putting this video together. I'm gonna take you out there tomorrow, but you'll see it on this particular video. Bought a sawmill, which was originally a Harbor Freight sawmill, which, as I'm a welder professionally, so we did some extensions, we did a little work to it, lengthwise. Couldn't do much for the width without altering it like majorly. But he uses a 12-foot blade, 144-inch blade, and I don't know what the width, 18, 20, 22, 20, couple feet, almost a couple feet across in width. For example, you can cut a piece of lumber, which I did this particular piece of lumber, which is white oak. This is just a panel board I'm going to use actually for wall covering. This is before it's stained. And I've done all kinds of stuff. I've done shelving. You can see this is a live edge slabs here. All this paneling. we cut it all on the sawmill. And so at the time, I had no idea how to work a sawmill. So I started doing watching some YouTube videos about sawmilling. So I went to Jersey and picked up this sawmill. And so I got this sawmill down here, and I dropped a tree on the ground. I didn't know what I was doing. I had a machine that was rented from a friend down here, and I was moving the logs around. I got them on there. I cut all this stuff up, and I just made a whole bunch of slabs. Because at the time, I'm living in suburbia, and there's no buildings out here. This is just woods. So I'm like, we're just buying a toy. We're just going to make, maybe we'll make flooring. Maybe we'll make paneling. Maybe I'll make a chicken house. I don't know. So I bring the sawmill down here, set it up, and I cut up probably, I think it was 2 or 3 logs. They weren't super big, but cut them up, put them in the truck, read all about how do you dry lumber, how do you use sticker boards which space out the lumber so that the air can get between the pieces of wood so that it can breathe. Because you can't use wet lumber to build with. I mean, you can, but you're not supposed to. It ends up twisting, warping, cracking, checking, drying out, unevenly. And you end up with boards that are all like wild. It looks like a Home Depot lumber. And so I cut all this wood up and I took it home to my old house. And I brought it in the front door, and I had kind of an in-law suite at that house. So I stacked all this wood up. And there was a couple ceiling fans in there. Turned the ceiling fans on. And I'm like, I don't know how long this takes to dry. The general rule is 1 inch per year aired out outside, right? If it's covered out of the weather. Like if you put it in a garage, you got a 2-inch board. That board's going to take 2 years to dry out to the core to equilibrium with moisture content and all that. Roughly, really roughly. Colder temperature going to take a little longer, but the colder temperature is typically in a drier environment. Warmer temperature will happen a little quicker, or if you have more airflow, it'll happen quicker. And then I learned about waxing the ends of the log to keep the ends from drying out faster so it wouldn't crack, because you end up with pieces that end up splitting. Anyway, a lot of research with woodworking. I'm not a woodworker, typically. I used to build houses. The closest thing I got to doing that was a miter saw with a 2x6. I'm not into cabinetry and framing with timber beams and all that kind of stuff. I don't have Amish ancestry, that's for sure. So get all this wood home, cut it all up. It's in the way. At the time I was with this girl who, she was climbing over it, she was living with me. And one day she just got a little too pissed off. So I said, all right, fine, I'll put it on Craigslist. I'll find somewhere to sell it. Again, not knowing what the timber was worth. So I posted it on Let Go and did a little rough research on what it was worth. But I'm like, it's not planed, it's not sanded, it's not stained, it's not polyurethane. Like, I didn't do anything to it. I just cut it up with a sawmill, and it's sitting in the bedroom stacked up on the corner of the room, right? It's in the way. So I had a guy show up who decided that this was a great deal. I had 10 pieces. Some of them were 2 inch, some of them were 1.5 inches. There was a couple plus or minus a little here and there. But it was all rough lumber. Like, if you look at this stuff, and if you look at actually how rough this finish is, and of course it's not super flat. We don't have it where it's all perfect. I have a planer. I have a sander. I can make it really nice, but we didn't do that kind of work to it. It's just really rough lumber. And I know that rustic stuff, it kind of sells. And I mean, it had the edge still on it. There was still bark still on it. And, and you still had all this on this wood. And so I said to the guy, look, I don't know what it's worth. So I did a little research, and I thought, these things are 12, 14 feet long, 1.5 feet wide, rough cut, 2 inches thick. I don't know, $50 a piece. And it's white oak. I think one of the logs was hickory or maple, and one of them was white oak. Anyway, so he showed up like like it was Christmas. He handed me $500 to take 10 pieces of this lumber, pretty good sized pieces, home with him. And so he runs off with this pile of lumber because he's got a construction job that he's doing, and he's going to make really good money from the homeowner. And so he takes the wood, and I never heard from him again after that. I don't know what happened. I moved. COVID happened. It was like right before COVID by the time this was. It was in 2019 into early 2020, going into the winter. So if you're watching this and you're the builder from Jersey and you want more, give me a call, because trust me, we got a whole bunch more trees that we got to take down. But neither here nor there. Anyway, so at that point, I discovered that a couple hours playing around with a sawmill in the woods was worth $500 in cash. And he seemed excited to be paid $500 for that. So my buddy Mike and I, he was the one who talked me into buying the sawmill, comes to me and says, "Hey, you should use it and build something with it." So here we are. We built this building that I am in right now, and I'm going to show you it. I'm going to show you the different things that we did here. There was a point there where COVID was hadn't happened quite yet, but we were kind of putting the building together. And I got to tell you, to use a sawmill to cut lumber with the lack of equipment, not having heavy machinery to move the logs around, because the wet logs weigh a lot. So all I can say is if you don't have a forklift or a telehandler or a crane or something to move these big logs around, it's brutal. And, when you're trying to roll them on the sawmill to get pieces of timber, like, for example, we have this piece here, which is about, I think it's like a 10 by 10 oak beam. That thing, I originally believe it was about 12 feet tall. It's cut down to about a 10 and a half or 11 footer right now. This thing, green, weighed more, and I'm a couple 100-pound guy, weighed more than I was comfortable moving around without trying to throw my back out. And I needed a dozen of these to put this building together, so it wasn't really worth all that. Eventually, I ended up getting debarkers, which is like a blade to shave bark off of a tree to save myself the aggravation of dealing with all the sawmilling portion of it, because it just needed such massive pieces of wood. And so I will show you what we come up with.
All right, this is it, people. Let's move. Let's go, 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 go.
Now you can see here that we did some, we can call this timber beaming, log type of stuff. Basically what we did was some of this stuff ended up being this heavy solid oak posts, and it just came off the sawmill, and it is what it is. You'll see some panel boards here that I actually did with different stain that I had laying around. The stain's all different colors, just a bunch of different random things, and I've actually got different parts of it to finish up here. One of the things you'll see is that I actually used a flat black paint. And everybody asks me, why did you use a flat black paint on the wall? That's a waste of time. Well, if you look at how this wood actually dries out, it dries out and it shrinks a little bit. And you'll see in different places it may shrink a little more or a little less than in others. And what I was trying to get away from was having that oak dry out, shrink, and leave a gap, and then to have the OSB, which is what's behind it. It's all OSB back there because I needed some solid wood. I couldn't do it over drywall. I needed some solid wood to be able to shoot some nails into, to be able to hold this stuff on. And so I also trimmed around the windows. I made, the window sills with it. We got a lot of little details I'm going to have to finish up. But basically, a lot of this ended up being things, wood that was nailed over non-drywall surfaces. And believe it or not, this live edge trim that goes around this door, done on the sawmill. I didn't build this door, I bought this door. But this inner trim and this face trim, case molding, I guess they call it. This came off of our sawmill. We do have drywall here, but below the drywall we have 1/2 inch OSB. And this is a 2x6 wall interior. That allowed us something solid with a little bit of meat on it, so when we went to go shoot these screws in, or not screws, but the brad nails, it had something to bite into, not just the framing behind the drywall. Another thing we did here was, if you look up, I made another shelf. It's got a bunch of random stuff on it, but pretty easy. You take your sawmill, you cut yourself a piece of wood, you let it dry out, stain it, sand it, polyurethane it, get a halfway decent finish on it. Then you just go to Lowe's or Home Depot and you just buy these flanges and these pieces of threaded pipe with a cap. Boom, you got a shelf. I mean, in the perfect world, I would have the little clamps, which I have them for all of them. But again, you're going to learn, if you watch this channel, that I end up having a whole lot of unfinished projects. In fact, I probably should call the channel Unfinished Business. So basically, throughout the COVID pandemic, I was coming up with projects to keep me busy. And what ended up happening was I ended up building this place. And it kind of started out with the option of having all this free lumber, which I still have a ton of it sitting around. So we got pieces of oak plank, perfect shelf right here, right? It's as simple as letting it dry out long enough, and you sand all the sharp edges and get the splintering off of it, and you end up with a piece of material that kind of looks like this. I guess this is a dark mahogany color, got kind of a golden oak. I ended up not being real picky about the color of the stain. I had so many different colors of stain. My mom passed away about 10 years ago, and one of her biggest passions was woodworking. Not on a real big scale. She would refinish furniture. She would do household projects and stuff. But in the end, I ended up with an entire room full of paint, stain, polyurethane. The polyurethane and the paint doesn't necessarily last very long. I mean, if you keep it in the can and you've got the can almost full, it kind of will. But the stain will last forever. I mean, you throw a little bit of turpentine or mineral spirits or kerosene or whatever to thin it out if you want to, but it doesn't necessarily like coagulate or dry up like paint would, and it doesn't get all kinds of gummy and pasty like polyurethane or even the polyacrylics will. So you end up with lots of different projects that you can do many years later, kind of in memoriam of someone who had all the materials to do it with. I went out in the woods in the middle of last summer, I guess it was, and I got this big old piece of white oak, and we went ahead and cut it down, and it's not exactly perfectly straight, as you can see, but I stained it. I believe the stain color is called Sedona Red. I don't know how well this is coming out in the camera there as far as the color goes, but I'm going to make a handrail out of this. And I've seen some pretty rustic looking, really cool looking handrails. This is going to be for kind of an upstairs balcony area, so it's pretty straight handrail. Well, this isn't straight, but straight across with some pickets. I haven't decided what kind of pickets we're doing, but again, we'll probably be out in the woods trying to figure that kind of stuff out. So I guess let me take you around and show you some of the stuff that we actually made with the sawmill.
A few moments later.
One of the things we did was we created bracing for the timber beams that we did here. I don't even know if you call it timber. It's just kind of logs, timber. I sort of incorporated the two together. Fabricated some steel brackets, galvanized lag bolts, and put all this stuff together. Turned out pretty nice. Another thing we did here was a live edge staircase. Still a work in progress. Again, just your basic L brackets, 1/4 inch. These are 1/4 inch with 5/16 steel. And we just went ahead and painted it. Turned out pretty nice. All about 3 inches thick. And that's our staircase there. Another thing we managed to completely make from scratch. 12-foot tall, 30, I believe they're 33 foot long trusses, which are sort of incorporated into the ceiling and second floor. And so they set on top of all of these timbers. And then in here we got the masonry fireplace, which that's again another work in progress. As you can see here, the staircase kind of turned out sort of interesting. Now in the second level, these trusses, we made these on the sawmill. We basically buried all but the exposed portion of them here. A little bit more work involved. I still got drywall to do, but we've got the surround sound in. And we've got an 80-inch TV hanging on the ceiling. So that's pretty cool. Another thing a lot of people don't think of. I had a client who had a whole bunch of MDF boards. They were 3/4 of an inch thick, 4x8, and with a circular saw and a fence, went ahead and made all of my own door trim. Because during the pandemic and with everything, the price of that stuff's kind of insane. This is not the finished color. This is going to be painted a semi-gloss white. And then I think I'm going to put a bifold door in this opening here. Another one of the nice touches from having the sawmill is being able to actually make your own live edge windowsills. Now in this, we have a couple of places that are basically, for the most part, they got knots in them. But what I did was I bought some epoxy, and the epoxy allows you to make them a completely flat surface. This is going to be painted again semi-gloss white like the rest of it. But that's again a piece of that 3/4 inch MDF 4x8 sheet. And I went ahead and made what I needed to trim the window with that, basically for free, which was awesome. But this is, I believe it's, oh gosh, I don't know, 1.5 inches. Basically the thickness of a 2x4. Yeah, so this area here will be the area that is going to have the handrail. Haven't figured out exactly how we're going to be attaching that here to the side of the oak, but close this off. This is, again, that's going to be drywalled. This area here is all going to be closed in, and then this is all wide open to the lower level. And then we have this galvalume corrugated, which same thing on the other side. We still have some walls and things we have to close in. Haven't made my mind up on some electrical stuff yet, so work in progress. So I don't know how long this video got, but I guess this will be part 1 of what are we capable of doing with a sawmill during the pandemic. Pandemic's over, but did a lot of stuff in the last couple of years here. If you guys had any questions, comments, put them below. And don't forget to subscribe because this is going to be pretty freaking interesting. If you're into DIY, you like making your own stuff, you like saving a buck, you'll want to follow. So part 2 coming up.
Another one. Another one. Another one. Another one. Another one. And another one. And another one.